welcome to this brand new video where I showcase the progress I've been making on my 3D modeling app, which I've been writing from scratch in C++. I do have to say that I use a couple of dependencies such as Skia and Yoga for calculating the UI layout and also rendering text on the screen. But other than that, there's a very limited amount of dependencies. I also use Cap and Proto, and I use libzip for serialization purposes, and I use TinyObj Loader right now for importing OBJ files. Other than that, the renderer, the entire UI framework, the data structures, all of them are implemented by me, or they come from my hands. And the main thing I want to demonstrate right now is kind of the state of where I am right now. So what you can see here is I have a panel layout and I can click and drag things. All of the UI event handling is done in a custom UI framework, and then the rendering of the 2D graphics is done by Skia, and the 3D graphics is rendered by me. Also the keyboard and mouse input here for the Orbit camera, that's all custom as well. Then we have the ability to select different tabs, and this will recreate the UI tree partially, and then it will discard or it will invalidate certain nodes so they don't get they're not kept around, which would create use after free errors. So let's import a 3D model. I only implemented OBJ right now, but we can add different ones later. And I import it, and I get a object or a scene node in the scene. And right now I didn't implement the tree view that would enable you to see the actual scene hierarchy, but it is there. So this is now a node in the scene, and it contains a reference to the mesh data, which has been imported from OBJ. And what we can do right now is we can go to the drop-down menu and select Mesh Editor. And this will create a editor context inside of the application, and this enables certain types of interactions. It created a default tool called Move Tool, which allows you to click and select vertices from the mesh and then drag them, and it will be translated using the plane that faces the camera. And this is a very primitive tool, very kind of like the most basic tool that you need in a 3D modeling program. So it's the first one that I implemented again. The rendering currently uses func shading. It's incredibly ugly, and the normals of the mesh are calculated as if the entire mesh were smooth. So the normal of a specific vertex is the average normal of all the surrounding faces, and this can obviously be improved if you add sharp edges, and also by adding PBR shading, for example. But right now this kind of shading works, and especially because I want to port the rendering backend from Metal to OpenGL to enable rendering on different platforms. I want to keep the backend as simple as possible and only add more complicated things afterwards. Then we have OBJ again, and we can import another OBJ. And this also brings me to another feature that was quite interesting to implement, which is object picking. It exists in almost every 3D modeling application or any program you've used that does 3D stuff. And the way it works is you So the goal is to click on an object and then select that one, but it needs to be pixel perfect. So if I click exactly here and then here, it should select the correct object. Now, you could create a bounding volume hierarchy, but that makes it CPU heavy, and we could also construct the BVH on the GPU, but it's all a lot of compute, and we don't really care about the exact position where we intersected. We just want to know which object was selected. So what we do is we render every 3D model or mesh onto a texture, and then each object gets rendered with its own color, and that color gets mapped to the ID of the object, and that way we can select a specific object. Then we can open the mesh editor again for a specific mesh, and then we can do the same kind of editing as we did with the other mesh. And one thing that's also important to note is that there's undo. So we can undo and redo specific operations, and that enables us to go back to the original state. And there's still some work left to be done with switching the editor and that kind of stuff, but for now this works relatively well. So the main thing I currently want to add, the thing that is missing, is the ability to save and load the project that you've made, and that is going to be done with Captain Proto and libzip. I implemented a lot of functionality already to do this. I just didn't tie everything together, and that's about it. So I'm really excited to move forward. It's in a state where I can almost start 3D modeling using my own application, which will give me a lot of dog fooding to know which features I need, and that's going to be very exciting. So I'm happy with the progress I've made. Right now, this is half a year of progress. The code base is 18,500 lines of code, and that will probably increase by quite a lot because I've mostly been working on the more fundamental systems, and those are harder to get right, and then adding separate features doesn't really require refactoring of the underlying system. So that's going to be exciting, and I will catch you in the next one.